Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Simbarashe Nyanhanga from Simba Media. Today, I am joined by two fine gentlemen from an organization called Zimbabwe.This Informed Policy Network, ZeipNet. They are going to be speaking about their organization. They're going to be speaking about their objectives, most importantly, about an event that is coming up. Gentlemen, big welcome.
Thank you.
Let me start by asking you, gentlemen, what really does Zimbabwe.This Informed Policy Network do?
ZeipNet was established to try to promote the use of research evidence in policy making in Zimbabwe. We try to coordinate overarching national processes that support the use of research evidence and, of course, other types of evidence to inform policy decisions. We do this through mostly capacity building and also engagement of the various stakeholders in the policy making matrix.
When you say evidence-informed policy network, policy making in African states in particular is a very complex jungle, and in most cases it's a highly political environment, and I understand it's very complex for us to separate those two, and also not to be too sensitive to the civic society as well. What are the apps that you might actually put across as the reason why people should be intimate to your organization, or the objectivities of your organization when it comes to policies that are implemented or the statutes that are put across to the civic society?
As ZeipNet, we also work on the premise that the policy making is very complex, but what is overriding is the fact that evidence plays a very critical role in informing policy decisions. So because of that, we try to also make our stakeholders appreciate the complexity of the policy making environment, particularly the politics that surround policy decisions. But what is important is that research and other types of evidence plays a critical role in making sure that the policies are not only effective but can also be implemented effectively.
Politics, we're not going to just center on the government political issue of things, but we also must understand where policies are made or deferred or are interred. There is always this red tape stereotype and as well as bureaucracy. And you guys as a network or as an organization that champions evidence-informed policies, don't you find challenges in engaging with some stakeholders like decision makers, policy makers as well?
There is the political economy of evidence itself. When it also depends, there's the demand and the supply side of evidence in the context of the political economy of the evidence. Where is the evidence coming from? That's the first key question which every policymaker would like to ask. What type of evidence is it, and where is it coming from? And who's supplying the evidence? So there's also a lot of mistrust in terms of the supply side of the evidence, in certain contexts. But if you look at certain scenarios, for example, the Ministry of Youth, they've appreciated the role of evidence within policy-making processes, due to the fact that they've formed the Research and Policy Department now, which we as ZeipNet are working with in order to concretize the use of evidence within the ministry itself. Yes, I agree with you, there's a lot of red tape and bureaucracy, but bureaucracy is also an essential ingredient for any policy-making matrix on the government to work through.
Quite complex it is, and I'm also appreciating the fact that you guys are working with some authorities, some government authorities, in also trying to intimate them and make them understand the importance of evidence-informed policy research. Would you like to add on to what Mr. Ndongwe said?
Probably just to add to what my colleague has intimated. You see, as ZeipNet, we believe that for policy decisions to be informed by evidence, there is need to be, those skills to be able to not only appreciate the importance but also be able to effectively access the research evidence itself, identify the different types of evidence that are critical to inform policy decisions, and also evaluate them for authenticity, integrity, and be able to effectively communicate this. This is probably on those individuals or technocrats who inform policy decisions, including, of course, external researchers and research intermediaries.
We are in an environment now where a lot of policies are deemed to not have worked. When I say not have worked, is they have not produced results, be it civic policies, be it at governmental level, be it also at a private sector level, be it if you look at labor policies and all that, they deem to, people feel like the policies that are being brought up, the constitutional amendments that are being brought up are not serving people, are not bringing the results that people expect or that people want. For instance, on the news today, we have the Mutare residents who are complaining about the supply and demand and value of water services. So how can you convince people from the walks of life, from the street, that policy can be changed, policies can be made practically, even if they are evidence-based?
We talk of evidence use, essentially. What we're saying is most of the policies in Zimbabwe, yes, they can deem to be good policies, but a good policy is one which can be implemented and give results of, for example, poverty reduction. It creates solutions for unemployment. It creates solutions for climate change. But in these instances where we are having a good policy on paper, but lack of implementation, it can be the evidence base. How credible was the evidence? How inclusive is the evidence? How many sources of evidence were consulted? Because when you talk of research evidence is not inclusive in itself. There's need to include other types of evidence. But when I'm giving an example from Mutare residents complaining about water delivery, what are were the citizens' participatory knowledge? Were they consulted in terms of what are the issues affecting the residents? How many residents are being affected by the water issue? And to have at least a baseline in terms of the number of residents affected. But this is not happening. And you also need to look at the type of states in which you are. There is the social valuation of evidence from different states. There's the plural states, a kind of state which accepts evidence as contributing to policy making, and there is also the totalitarian, where they see evidence as a challenge to the status quo. You see, these are some of the issues which you need to look at. But most of these policies, if you notice, they are being driven from political manifestos. Just for interest's sake, for example, we have the Zim asset document. It's talking about 2 million jobs. What is the evidence base to get those 2 million jobs? It's a political manifesto which was made into economic blueprint to drive the country. Then they say it's a good policy, but nothing will change because there's no credible evidence base within the policy itself.
Mr. Munatsi, what's your take on this one?
I would probably want to also emphasize, the need to consult a broad range of evidence when it comes to making policy decisions. As he has correctly said, as much as we emphasize the importance of research evidence because of obviously the rigor and the scientific process through which it undergoes before it can be made into findings or recommendations to inform policy, there's also need to triangulate the research evidence with other types of evidence, of course. For example, he has correctly indicated the need to also consult the people at grassroots level, and also to get expert advice from experience from practitioners who are experts in some of these issues. And obviously he has raised a very critical issue of accurate data or statistics. If you look at our situation, for example, it is actually government policy that civil servants and other technocrats are supposed to use statistics from ZimStats. Not saying ZimStats is not a credible institution, But I think ZimStats is also bedeviled by other, challenges, lack of resources, lack of capacity, such that it does not have, the up-to-date, correct statistics for, data, to address certain policy issues. This is why we are saying there is also need to have this capacity to be able to also know other credible sources of evidence, compare with also data from institutions like IMF, World Bank, and so on.
I understand that you as ZeipNet, you subscribe to Africa Policy Network. Looking at the broader picture beyond the Zimbabwean, why is it that Africa is still struggling when it comes to policy implementation? What way are we getting it wrong? Is it that we, as the Africans in particular, we do not have the capacity to take stock of what we say we are going to do and do it, or where are we getting it all wrong?
Evidence-informed policy making is a chronic governance problem, because as it is a tool itself, it is there to promote accountability and transparency. It's very unfortunate to say that in Africa we still have certain governments, perhaps, which are most governments in Africa, they appoint people in terms of technocrats from political platforms. In political platforms don't attract talent, you see. And then you notice that in most African governments now, and most of them now, the nature of the civil servants. The civil servants themselves, the composition of the civil servants. For example, in Zimbabwe, we have people who have actually overstayed in some of these positions, and there's this tendency of a culture of doing things. We used to do these things 10 years ago, and you want to do these things again 2016 going forward. You see, so this is quite a challenge in some of these policy, trying to use evidence in terms of in policy making, because there's a culture of doing things where perhaps if you want to introduce something new, they'll tell you these things don't work. We have been doing this. And that's the major deficiency in terms of most governments in Africa, in particular Zimbabwe. But this issue, perhaps again, I think one of the other issues is also you look at the political systems in Africa, where it's mostly driven by patronage systems, not really by the ability to deliver as a government. And when you drive it from the political platforms, not really from the governance and development, then you have these people overstay, and in the process it derails development in its instance.
Absolutely. Mr. Munatsi, would you like to add on to that one?
I would also want to add that coupled to that, of course, there's the issue of our governments not investing, in research. You find that where there is a high concentration of think tanks, where governments also invest in research, there is also high levels of development, you see. But you find that most of these think tanks, the high quality think tanks, the go-to think tanks are more concentrated, in developed countries like Europe and America, whereas in Africa you get one or two. So this actually means that in Africa we don't invest in research. We don't feel that research is important for development, which is actually unfortunate, because if you look at some of these countries that are highly developed, they don't even have resources to talk about in terms of raw materials, in terms of other like tangible resources to support the economy, but they invest in research, technology development and innovation.
You do have an event. Can you elaborate more? Can you intimate me more to the event that you're having?
ZeipNet, in partnership with the Africa Evidence Network, organized this forum. Essentially, it's meant to try to strengthen the national institutional framework that supports the use of research evidence, where we have invited the various actors. Because if you look at the situation that we are in, most of these important actors in the policy making mix work in isolation, where you get policymakers there, you get research institutions there, you've got these think tanks and academics there. The media, on the other hand, they are there. You see, they are not working collaboratively, towards informing policy decisions. So the idea behind this forum is to essentially launch our project, which seeks to not only improve institutional processes of engaging, and also communicating evidence, but also create networks and platforms to enable this engagement.
Some of the we are looking at some participants from the government, the media, the civil society will be coming for the event. So we are trying to make it as inclusive as possible in order to address some of these challenges which have been in the arena of the research and policy debate for a long time.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for the time that you have taken with us. My name is Simbarashe Nyanhanga from Simba Media. I was speaking to two gentlemen from Zimbabwe Evidence Informed Policy Network, ZeipNet. It is very important that we engage with the organizations like ZeipNet so that we all participate in such fundamental and important milestone events of our country, of how we are governed as people.